Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode. It's your favorite business coach, Frank Hereda. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Sonny Moyers. And we're going to have some interesting conversations today. We get to know him a little bit and get to know he's got a great book out. And we're going to talk about that. Before we get started about where you grew up in your early life, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, the title of the book, and then we can kind of talk about where we're gonna go today, because we've got a lot we can cover.
Well, Frank, I really look forward to the interview, and hope I could be of great help to your audience and provide them some good advice and some good suggestions for how to build their business. Entrepreneurship I've been involved in doing businesses my whole life. And just to give you a little background, I started out at Abilene Christian University. I was an athlete there, and I had a wife and a baby, which made me a little different at 19 years old. And so I was playing football and, quite frankly, needed to make some money because being on scholarship, I had all my school paid for, but I had a wife and baby to take care of. And so I was kind of desperate for a solution, and my book goes into some of the details behind that. But I found an ad for a apartment manager position, an assistant manager, and I interviewed for it. And I was at 19 years old. I'm shocked that they even considered hiring me, but they did. And I wondered why. And about 2 weeks after I was hired as the assistant manager of this small apartment complex, 28-unit apartment complex at Abilene, about 2 weeks afterwards being hired, I kept wondering, when's this guy going to train me on something, the manager? Are these going to, what am I going to do here, And one night the doorbell rang, and I answered the door, and the manager handed me a stack of books and a pouch filled with money and checks and cash, and handed me a pouch with keys, and said, "I'm leaving. Nice to have known you," and walked out. He was loaded up and left, and in the information was the information of the ownership of the apartment complex, a gentleman named W.R. Dick Kendrick. And Dick Kendrick was a Abilene realtor who owned and operated shopping centers and apartment complex or two, and a real estate firm. And the next day I arranged to go see him, and we sat down and started talking, and I'm sure he was wondering, how the heck did this 19-year-old kid get to be my assistant manager? And now he's standing here with a whole bunch of books and money and telling me that my manager walked out, and I'm sure he was wondering, what the heck's going on here? How did this guy get the job? But somehow Mr. Kendrick, and this goes into some of the things I write about in my book, intuitive thinking. You may remember the name Daniel Wegner, who wrote about the unconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a master's degree in psychology.
Okay.
So when I started doing my book, and many years now, I've taught all over the world. I've taught in 20 different countries. But Daniel Wegner wrote about the unconscious mind, and particularly in regard to intuitive thinking. And what people might realize is that when you pick up on something, your unconscious brain is registering, forming opinions in the unconscious, and you may not even know it, but you've already formed an opinion, which might be, example would be, you and I meeting today and talking, we probably formed an early opinion about each other, and that happened unconsciously.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Kendrick, for whatever reason, liked me. And at 19 years old, I didn't even know how to balance a checkbook. He hired me to be his apartment manager.
Wow.
And then later on, about a year later, asked me if I would be interested in getting a real estate license. And that's how I got into real estate. And
that's pretty interesting.
I went ahead and finished because of Mr. Kendrick, who was a tremendous mentor and a tremendous human being, helped me through some very tough times. And by the time I finished, I got my undergraduate degree in management with a minor in communications, and later went back and got my master's degree in psychology, human behavioral theory, research methods, in communications, and did a master's thesis that had to dealt with communications theory, self-disclosure, reciprocity, and some things like that. And
Okay.
so I that's a little unusual profile for
It
a real
is.
estate agent.
Yeah, right.
But I was involved in real estate for then, and I went to work for a big corporation, worked in a big corporation, did a consulting business related to real estate, traveled all over the world and taught marketing and sales all over the world. And one of the areas that I taught a great deal was business planning methodologies, how to do a marketing plan, how to build a business model, how to build your business model, and how to create a marketing plan and a business plan. And as an entrepreneur, I think one of the major deficiencies I see in people who start a business is they just don't have a plan. They have some money, they have an idea, they have a desire and a goal, and they jump into the water. Unfortunately, sometimes they find that they can't swim.
Mm-hmm.
And so my book has a lot about that. My book takes someone who thinks that they want to become a real estate agent but doesn't know a thing about it. They'll go and get their license and have this misconception that if they get the license and they affiliate with a big company, a good company, that buyers and sellers are just going to come flocking to their door, and that they're going to be successful and drive a fancy car and take people to lunch, and it'll be easy.
Sure.
And well, it's sure not that, is it?
No, it's not. But I find that, and it'd be interesting to get your take. You've been in it a lot longer than me. I think I'm now 23 years in the business. You've been in a lot longer than me at that.
50 plus.
So 50 plus. So that's impressive. So the question is, do you think, I feel like TV has really exacerbated that problem. Like people, they see the luxury on TV, the shows, how easy it is, the negotiation, and it's not like that. But I also find that anything you go and get a license for, so I had my financial licenses when I first got out of college. It's the same type of thing, right? You get your financial license, your real estate license, whatever. That's like the work then begins. You haven't even started the real work, right? Because you have to build a business and figure out how to get business.
Exactly. Well, there's 1,520,000 agents in the United States that are affiliated with NAR, the National Association of Realtors. And that affiliation, to be able to call yourself a realtor, you have to be affiliated with NAR, the association. But these are statistics from a couple of years ago when I started writing the book. It took me 2 years to write the book. In the United States, there's 3 million real estate agents. And of those, 1,520,000 or so are affiliated with NAR. Well, that's a lot of people. Now, if you take the population of the United States, 330 million, I'm guessing now.
Roughly.
It changes every day, right?
Yeah, right.
But 330 million, and divide that by 3 million, there's a whole lot of real estate people for every 100 people in the United States.
Yep. Now,
if you take my area where I live in, a wonderful neighborhood called Windsong Ranch in Prosper, Texas, there's 2,800 homes. Now, in this neighborhood, there are probably 75 agents who live here. And there are probably another 100 or 150 that want to do business here. So if you take 2,800 homes and divide it by even 100 agents, there's not, and if you take, if there's 2,800 homes, a whole bunch of them aren't ready to sell or buy. They just moved here. Maybe a few years ago, they moved here. Mm-hmm. And the people move every 5 to 7 years. So where I'm headed with this is there's significant competition.
Absolutely.
This isn't just in real estate. This is in professional services, companies in general, financial planning, insurance, whatever. So the book appeals to a lot of different venues, but for your listening audience, if they're anything to do with professional services companies and competing against other, what I might call Goliaths, okay? And I would be considered one of the Goliaths in real estate here because of my past experience and success. But when they're competing, they better have a better plan than I'm a nice guy and you should hire me. In fact, most people, you might be familiar with the term social conditioning.
I think, why don't you explain it and I'll tell you if I'm right or wrong.
Well, social conditioning is where the society in general is conditioned to have certain beliefs, thoughts, and ideas. And those beliefs, thoughts, and ideas, for example, real estate is an easy job. You get a license. Here's about what you'll have to pay to have a realtor. The seller's going to pay the fee for me to have a buyer agent. They're going to drive me around in a fancy car, but they probably don't know a whole lot, except they just know they have keys to all the houses.
That's right.
And that makes the real estate world, that social conditioning has the society in general, buyers and sellers, conditioned to an impression of what a realtor does. And that what that impression is, you might say that they think that all realtors are ubiquitous, pretty much alike, because they all do much the same thing and they all know pretty much the same thing. And the promulgated forms from the real estate commissions in each state kind of support that, because they're fill in the blank forms. So when an agent does a contract, they fill in the blanks, and the consumer might think, well, all they're doing is filling in blanks. They're getting paid all this money to fill in blanks. I mean, they don't have to be a lawyer. They don't have to be an accountant. And that kind of makes the ubiquitous idea that all people are alike. And many people think that all financial planners are pretty much alike. In fact,
well, they're not. That's even more varied, I feel like, than real estate agents, because you get into the registered agents and, non-registered, and then there's different categories of that, and fee-based, that kind of thing. Or they can do both. They can do fee-based and commission. So,
but one of the challenges is that the public, the general consumer, may not know all that.
They don't. And
they're socially conditioned to think that these different professional services companies, CPAs, for example, are pretty much the same. And that's not true, but that's what they think. And so what this brings us to mind is a concept called differentiation. And what the fundamental question I've asked many real estate agents here that I know, I've said, okay, so in fact, I was with a group yesterday morning, 15 real estate agents with anywhere from 50 years, 45 years to 2 years of being in business. And I asked them this question: how would you differentiate yourself? Tell me 3 ways that you're going to differentiate yourself from the people who compete with you in your market area. How are you different? How are you better?
And most of them don't do it.
Most of them don't, yeah.
And the other piece is, it comes down to being able to state your unique value proposition, whatever we want to call it, right? So let's say it's 3 or 5, but what problems are you solving, right? And it's the potato chip aisle example. A guy I work with always uses the potato chip aisle example. You walk down the row, potato chips, that's every agent. And they all look the same. How are you going to pick which bag of chips you want? And that comes down to understanding what you do to solve problems and how do you do it differently. And I just think that agents aren't prepared for that conversation.
For sure. And you and I are speaking the same language here, because I have a story to tell you about that. You go to a hotel and you walk into a wonderful ballroom and there's 300 people there. Let's say 299 people there. And they're all real estate agents. Okay. And they all are dressed in gray. And they all have a badge on their chest that proclaims their realtor status. Okay. And they all have salesperson stamped across their foreheads. Okay. But one person walks in and they're in blue. And they don't have a badge on. And they have a different look and a different expression on their faces. And all across their forehead, it says, I care about you. Now, that's differentiation. And what that says is, I want to be able to stand out in a crowd. Because, see, most real estate people are product salespeople. They think they're selling homes. And this is where you and I really connect. I don't sell homes. I solve problems.
That's right.
I help people make good decisions. And those good decisions are not only getting a place to live, but being able to sell that place to live at some point in the future. So what I try to do is be a consultant to the client and a collaborative, consultative real estate agent, rather than a product-oriented salesperson. And I think that's a big difference. And I think even financial planners, I'm always amused when I go to a meeting, a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and there's 25 or 30 people there, and they all have salesperson stamped on their foreheads. Okay. And someone walks up to me and says to me, I'm a financial planner and I have a package. I have a plan that they turn it into a product. The products I market are, and that's sometimes some of the language of some of these financial management people. Well, real estate agents do the same thing. They think they're selling homes. What they're really doing is helping somebody solve a problem, finding a place to live, how to get the kids in good schools, how to create a lifestyle that they would enjoy. And so my entire approach, my entire real estate career has been how to solve problems, not how to sell a home. But selling the home just happens.
That's right.
And I think this is where you and I really agree from a philosophical perspective, that if you just take care of the client and put the client first, I mean, what is fiduciary responsibility? Fiduciary responsibility is to put the client first in all matters. Their best interest, not yours.
That's right.
And so when you're a fiduciary to the client, it's not that you're trying to sell a home. You're trying to solve a problem. And as a result, the home sale happens. But too many real estate agents get invested in the product rather than the solution for the client. And they look like and they act like a product salesperson. And as a result, they fit in with the ubiquitous idea. Right. Now, when they do that, when all things are equal, what would a client typically ask for? What is the difference in what you do? And if you're all the same, how much do I have to pay? And that drives people to negotiate commissions. And so one of the best ways to avoid being in that role of negotiating commission is to stand apart and different from the norm, and to be able to demonstrate through demonstrating proficiency. And that term, demonstrating proficiency, is an important concept. Demonstrating I'm sorry, you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'll let you finish and then I'll ask.
Well, have you heard that before yet?
I have.
Okay. Demonstrating proficiency is very different. Here's the best way I would describe it. One of the people in my meeting yesterday that I was speaking to came into real estate, and the first thing they didn't really know what to do because they didn't have a marketing plan. So they went out and got a bunch of designations. Now, going out and getting a bunch of designations that are a logo that you can put on your business card, they thought that was proof that they were an expert. But the way you demonstrate that you're an expert is through demonstrating proficiency, not by proclaiming on a business card because you have a logo for which you pay so much per year and you went to a 2-day class for.
That's right.
Or maybe a 1-week class. Yeah. Now, I'm not against designations. I'm certainly not against them. But I think that many people use that and think that means something. And to the public, being a designation of relocation client, relocation buyer, a specialist, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so when they demonstrate proficiency, the logo, the card, the designation is shallow proof. Demonstrating proficiency is real proof.
Absolutely.
So what you want to do with a client is you want to capture them long enough, create a relationship with them to give you enough time to demonstrate proficiency and capture them in your net. Okay? And that's real different than saying my card proves it all.
It's funny you're talking. So when you said demonstrate proficiency, have I heard of it before? I've heard of it, not maybe in those terms.
Sure.
But I was talking to a group of real estate agents that I actually coach, and this morning, and I was talking to them about a process that I love. Brian Tracy, Jim Rohn, a lot of those guys. I've listened to almost everything they have, and over the years, but Brian Tracy came up with a 7-step sales process for anything you want to do. Yeah. And what I was telling my clients was step 2 and 3, everybody seems to be skipping. And that was build rapport and trust. And then the third step was ask quality questions that or ask questions that identify needs accurately.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's kind of in the realm of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've observed is that the new agent is so anxious to demonstrate that they know something, that what happens in what might call the prospecting stage, okay, of a sales process, is that the salesperson or the real estate agent asks a question of Frank and hoping to hit a hot button. Now, Frank responding to the agent hits a hot button. And the agent immediately says, oh, I've got the answer. And that moves them into a sales presentation process. And when they move to a sales presentation process, it terminates the prospecting stage, because it sends a signal to the client that we talked, we got to meet each other a little bit. I asked you a couple of questions, and now I'm presenting.
That's right.
And the client says, wait a minute, we're moving to the presentation stage. And the agent moves into telling how much they know. So one of the most important things that a new person can do, who's either any of the professional services fields, is when they want to prospect and understand your needs and wants, and they ask questions, is to not do this. To pull that hand down and listen and document and continue to ask questions and prospect rather than presenting. But so many salespeople are so anxious to present and show what they know that they fall into the trap of being hot buttoned, presenting and terminating the prospecting stage. Well, the clients will tell you a great deal if you give them the opportunity and you don't start presenting.
Yes. They skip the buy-in. They don't ever get the buy-in.
Right.
And there's another thing that I talk to my clients about, which isn't mine. It comes from a guy, his name's Phil Jones, but he has this concept of the conversation triangle. And there's 3 parts to a triangle, and there's curiosity, there's empathy, and there's courage. And you need all 3 to have the right type of communication. And you have the curiosity, which creates context. And that helps you get to the curiosity helps you ask questions, and that gives you the context. And then you can have empathy and start building trust because you can relate. And then you have the courage to close. And so it's kind of a speedy process.
I agree with that. I really think that's a great philosophy. Are you familiar with Sidney Gerard's work on self-disclosure and reciprocity?
No.
Okay, Sidney Gerard was a psychologist, psychotherapist, and he wrote about this concept called self-disclosure and reciprocity, which I write about a lot in my book. It's one of the major chapters in my book. And it's an interpersonal communications theory. And let me relate it to how it actually applies to his world. With a patient who is clutched up, pressured, under crisis, whatever the case might be, the patient is reluctant to disclose information because they're afraid of what that person they're disclosing to might do with that information. And he ties that directly to another concept called the theory of the mask. And the theory of the mask is that when people meet each other, most people have a mask on of some kind. Some people's mask is very thick. Some people's very thin. I could tell within 30 seconds that your mask is very thin and that you're very visible to the world, but a lot of people aren't. So Gerard's teaching was to the other man, we are a mystery. They don't know what we might do or we're thinking. They won't know how, they don't know, and they're afraid of how the information I disclose might be used against them. And so what Gerard wrote about was the willingness of a psychotherapist to reciprocate with disclosure when disclosed to, thereby removing the mask and allowing people to be seen and liked. And if you believe that people buy from people they know and like, then it's essential to remove the mask and allow them to see you. Well, many salespeople, I shouldn't say most, because that's probably an overreach, But many salespeople want to ask questions and get information, but aren't disclosing. And that sends a signal to the prospect that everything you tell me will be used against you in a court of law, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to tell you anything about me.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
Well, that doesn't work well. So one of the theories, philosophies I've coached and taught most of my life, I've never done really one-on-one coaching. I've done consultative training and things like that, seminars, programs, and I think you said you're doing some coaching, and I'm sure that's a very valuable tool that you provide to your clients. But I think that Girard's theory of self-disclosure reciprocity is an essential interpersonal communications theory. And all the research shows that that concept applies not only to the patient, but to other people in general. So if you picture going into a bar and sitting down next to someone and they just start disclosing information to you, and next thing you know, you're saying things to them you probably wouldn't say to most people that you knew because you might be afraid how they'd use it. So it's not a choice. It's a psychological need to reciprocate with similar disclosure when disclosed to. And it's a very important interpersonal communications concept. So one of the key things for a great salesperson to do is to learn that when the client says things like, I feel, I need, I want, those are telling you that disclosures are getting ready to come. And if you don't reciprocate with similar disclosures, you're going to terminate the relationship of communication and cut off that in disclosing relationship, and removing the layers of the onion is what builds trust in relationships. So you take the onion skin theory, the theory of the mask, and self-disclosure reciprocity, you have three legs to a stool. Okay.
Yeah.
And that concept, you take those three together, very powerful interpersonal communications theory. And that's why my book is about psychology. It's the architecture of the real estate practice, but the psychology and art of the real estate profession. So the book is really about psychology, interpersonal communications. It's not about contracts. It's not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about how to build relationships with people over time.
It's really funny how the word relationships comes into play with all of these facets of business, right?
Sure.
Whatever it is, it's all about
For sure.
relationships.
Yeah.
And that's all we're talking about is how to build relationships fast, how to make them strong. And that's really it.
Well, and I told you about my meeting with Mr. Dick Kendrick, W.R. Dick Kendrick, when I was 19 years old and he hired me as his manager. He was a highly disclosing person. He had no fear. And I was a very expressive, outgoing, disclosing person. So the ability for he and I to communicate quickly and very quickly form opinions about each other in the unconscious mind and the conscious mind as well allowed him to see something in me that said, I'm going to let this 19-year-old kid run my 28-unit apartment complex, handle thousands of dollars of money each month. Certainly when I was in dire financial straits, that's not always a good recipe, is it?
Yeah.
Give somebody the keys to the kingdom when they're in dire financial straits. And yet he did. He trusted me, and we were able to. He was a mentor for years. And quite frankly, I probably wouldn't have finished college had it not been for Mr. Kendrick.
It's interesting also, I find that in business, but, I always tell my coaching clients that, finding a mentor is always a great option, right? And some of us stumble upon one, some of us seek them out. But it's funny how many times I'll hear about somebody who's been in a business a very long time, very successful like yourself, and they came across someone that changed everything for them early in their career. And that's, you fit that model like the most.
Yeah. Well, and then have you heard of do you read Malcolm Gladwell's books?
I've read some, sure.
I love his books. And my book is patterned a lot like some of his books in the sense of the complexity of it. His books are not an easy read.
Sometimes they aren't. Yeah, they're pretty.
Tipping Point.
I love to dive deep into them, the data. That's what I love about them.
Tipping Point, Blink. David versus Goliath. I mean, these are all great books. And in Tipping Point, he talks about the law of the few. And you may remember that, but
I didn't read that book, so I'm not familiar.
Right.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying our conversation because I think we have a same wavelengths on a lot of things, and I hope the audience is getting a lot from this. But I think the Gladwell and his law of the few, and he uses a term called connector.
Okay.
And a connector is somebody who's you might call them a social butterfly. They're somebody who knows everybody and everybody knows them.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody likes them, and they collect friends like some people collect coins or antiques or art or sports memorabilia.
Yeah.
And they have lots of people that they know. Well, one of the most important strategies in marketing in real estate is to find a connector. And you might market to 500 homes in a neighborhood. And the idea that you're going to market to 500 homes and that a whole bunch of them are going to call you and list their homes with you, and you're going to get all these many clients, is just not true.
Mm-hmm.
What you're really doing, you're marketing to 500 to find the few. Now, if those few are also connectors, then you've opened the fountain of income. Because
very true.
In this case, and this is why relationships in real estate and in financial planning and probably insurance are the key to success, because if you form relationships with people and if they're connectors, it's even more important because they're the people who know everybody, and they're going to open up because of their nature. They're going to open up their sphere of influence. They're going to open up their family connections within their own families. And they're going to share those people with you, and you will end up getting a lot of people to work with, but not because you appeal to the masses, but because you found the few. So what we're doing is really looking for a few good people, aren't we?
That's right.
From that
That's
movie,
a very good point.
Good Men. And so when you market, people think that you're marketing to 1,000 homes, maybe in a particular neighborhood, and that you're going to send out 1,000 pieces of mail, and you're going to get 25 phone calls, and they're all going to be people who want to use your services. Well, that's not true. It doesn't happen. You might get one.
That's right. Well, it's also length of time. Yeah.
And so from a marketing perspective, what it is the law of the few. We did a study of our own business over a 10-year period where we looked back at where our income came from. Now, we used a very complicated and important CRM to do this, but we tracked source of leads, where they came from, who they referred, and what kind of impact that had on our total business income. And we went back and looked at over a period of 10 years, how many clients were the root cause of most of our income. Okay. In other words, the tree started with a person who referred people, and we tied all that together by tracking in our CRM. Mm-hmm. And we found that about 15 clients represented 80% or more of our revenue by who they referred and who they referred. So it starts with the law of the few. Get a few good clients who will refer you and open their sphere of influence. And that's the secret to success, because one client could refer you or produce $200,000, $300,000 worth of real estate income.
You never know.
And it's happened many times in our group. Being in 50 years, we've had lots of experience. Many of our clients we've done multiple transactions with over 20 years.
Not that it matters. I'm just curious. What CRM was it?
Top producer for real estate.
Okay. I've used that.
It's a Canadian company. It's a really old, we started it 28 years ago.
I've used it.
I mean, and it is a little complicated. It's a little bit challenging to learn, but I'll tell you something. The ability to assign classifications and client codes was essential in our marketing effort. So what we did, we used the CRM as our, by the way, we could not have done a sophisticated marketing program without a good CRM.
No, it's mandatory. It's essential.
Absolutely impossible to do. Now, we also introduced some concepts that I brought into our real estate firm that most people aren't using or are familiar with, and that's account management programs, client management programs, and account planning. Now, what that took a philosophy from major corporations and said, all right, Frank's a really good client. He's a connector. Okay. And I want to open him up. I want to get to his sphere of influence. And so I'm going to code him P1 in my system. And somebody else might be coded P2 and somebody else P3 and somebody else P4. But Frank is going to be P1. And I'm going to spend a significant amount of my personal time as a real estate agent working with Frank, because Frank is a connector. He's got everybody knows Frank. Frank knows everybody. And so that's how you work and build referral networks and grow your business. So an account plan is it could be 2 pages or it could be 30 pages about Frank, his family, his connections, who he knows, how he knows them, how does he connect with people, and is he a raving fan?
Okay. Good
You
book.
read the book Ken Blanchard, Raving Fans. Okay.
Good book.
Okay. It's a good book. It's a simple, easy book, isn't it?
It is.
But it's a great concept. And raving fan, if Frank's a raving fan and also a connector, oh, wow. And if he's on social media, wow, then I've got a real fountain of income. Okay. So the ball game is not to find a whole bunch of people who might buy homes from you or let you be their financial planner or get their insurance through you. The game plan is to find a few people who know a whole lot of people and have an impact that when they say call Sonny or call Frank, it means something. Okay, that's the real ticket.
Gotcha.
And, I found that to be the case. And some of our people, we had State Farm Insurance opened up its regional headquarters in Dallas a number of years ago. And one of our clients was a medium to lower level manager. I tell the story in the book, by the way, and I'm not going to use their real names, but let's call her Gail for a minute. Gail bought a moderately priced home for Dallas. It was about $350,000, but within days, she referred people to us. I mean, within days, she became a raving fan almost immediately. Now, she worked with my wife in that particular transaction, and Judy made her a raving fan immediately. And so this Gail started referring people to us, and they would call us up and said, I'm moving to Dallas. Gail told me to call you. She said, call Sonny and Judy. That's how powerful that referral was. And those people, we ended up selling over 20 clients as a result of Gail. Now, Gail gave us people who referred people who referred people. At times, we had 2 or 3 people referring the same person.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how you build a real estate business that stands the test of time. And it becomes a practice over time rather than just making some sales. And that's why I'm not a big fan of product-oriented salespeople, because they didn't buy from us because we were selling homes. They bought from us because they could trust us. We were highly competent and we were highly professional. And that was the ticket to our success. We were very successful, thank goodness. In 2015, I was voted by the Dallas Business Builders Association the #1 realtor in Dallas. And only one person could win that award that year. It's not like D Magazine, which is a really nice award to win.
Sure.
D Magazine for 16 straight years, Best of Dallas D Magazine. However, there were about 200 agents that got that award.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
you're one of one with with that award.
Yeah, and so there's a difference between being very successful in real estate means you're successful over time,
mm-hmm.
and that you have clients who call you back and trust you enough to believe in you. In fact, one of the most important things going on right now is many of the changes in real estate is that a client who wants you to be successful, who wants you to get business, and who wants you to make money because you do so much for them. You're so valuable to them. I have another one for you. And if I'm going too fast or too hard, you stop me, Frank, because I get really excited about what I'm doing.
You're good, buddy. You're good.
All right. Have you ever heard the term, the client relationship must survive closing?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what that says is, the way I say it, is that the client thinks, I'm going to buy a house. I need a realtor. I want to go out and get me an agent. And they think that you're going to do a great job for them, which you do, and that you're going to go to closing and they're going to sign on their house, and you're going to probably bring them a nice little gift, maybe take them to lunch. And that is, when that's over, that's pretty much it. That's what the client thinks.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
well, that's what, and just an interjection, that's what most agents do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's another one of those social conditioning things. See,
Mm-hmm.
they think that, okay, I need something, I get it, I'm done. Okay?
That's right. It's
Now,
not that investment long-term outlook.
Yeah, what we want to do is at the closing, we want to, as we move from sale to closing, we want to start building on why you should have me in your life after closing. Why I can be valuable to you over many years, not just when you buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look for ways to be important, valuable to the client so that the relationship survives closing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, many agents do follow-up mailers. Hey, you've been in your home for 3 years. But one of the most biggest mistakes people make is they keep sending sales messages to that client after closing. I sold another home.
Mm-hmm.
I made top producer.
The worst postcard ever.
Yeah.
Just sold, just listed.
Just listed, just so, because it's not original content. It has almost nothing to do with the client who bought the home.
Nothing.
Because that client's there for 5 to 7 years unless something unfortunate happens or something great happens. Okay. But they're there for a while. They're kind of asleep for a while, you know. And so you got to find reasons to talk to them that aren't sales related.
That's right.
And so that's what's called a perception sale. Now, a perception sale is a sale that doesn't necessarily make you any money, but changes the perception of the client so that they believe that you're important to have in their lives going forward. And that's how you cause a relationship to survive closing.
That's it. So I agree with everything you're saying. And I wish and hope more agents take the advice. But let's go back to, if it's okay, I'd love to go back to the business planning.
Sure.
Talk to me a little bit about, you know, when I think about a business plan, I work with multiple types, right? Depending on the business. But you're talking about mission and vision, values. You're talking about numbers from the year before and numbers of where we want to get to this year. You're talking about seasonality, maybe. You might be talking about the marketing and lead gen. You got your expenses on there and maybe a SWOT analysis. So of those, I mean, is that what we're talking about? Do you have, is this something different, or is it those and certain pieces that are more important than others?
Well, if you read some more about me, you find out that I was in charge of a lot of different things in major corporations that were theory, marketing theory, management theory, and things like that. And from that, I developed what might be called a planning model for doing a business and marketing plan. Okay. And so let me just kind of give you a quick snapshot of it.
They can get the book to find it all out, but maybe give us a rough draft.
The book ends with a chapter on the business model.
Okay.
Why you need a business model. And what most people do, they go into real estate without a general idea of what their business model is. In fact, most people go into real estate who don't know how to write a business model.
Not at all.
They haven't identified their profit centers, their client benefit statements. They haven't identified their primary marketing strategies. They haven't explored fundamental concepts that will allow them to be successful, like professionalism is synonymous with value, okay? The magic minute and things of that nature. And so they have no idea how to write a business model. What the book does is takes them through a process of how to develop and write a business model. And then it provides them in chapter 37 a sample business model that was mine that allowed us to be highly successful over a period of over 20 years. Okay. Now that from there, we now fast forward to the next step. Let's assume you've gotten to that point. You have a clearly identified business model, who you're going to market to, how you're going to market to them, what your fundamental concepts are, and now it's time to write the business plan. Okay. Well, let's start out with a pyramid. Okay. And some of this I'm sure you will know and have already heard before. not much in business is new. Okay. Although I do have some concepts that people usually haven't heard about because of the psychology background. But let's start out at the very top of the pyramid, your mission statement. Okay. Now, your first mission statement is a public mission statement, and it's no more than 4 or 5 sentences long. And the best way to describe it is for the public good. What are you going to do for your publics? What are you going to do for your people, the people that work with you, your clients? Okay. And that mission statement is a short, concise document of why you exist. What are you going to do that's important? Okay. Now, the underlying mission statement is the private mission statement. And that one includes money. It includes your financial goals and your non-financial goals. And you might have 15 non-financial goals and 3 or 4 financial goals. Okay. Now, when the new realtor starts out, they haven't the slightest idea. Without a business model, without a plan, they really don't know how to even, they got to have a business model to start, and most of them don't. Okay. Now, underneath the primary, the mission statements and the public and the private mission statements, then you have primary marketing strategies. And those primary, if you think of the pyramid, you've got 1, 2, public and private. Then you have primary business strategies. And this is a little difficult to talk about without a picture or a chart behind it.
Sure.
But the primary business strategies, one of them might be differentiation.
Okay.
How do I stand out and be different from the 1,520,000 real estate agents that are out there and the 99 other agents who want to sell in Winsong Ranch? Okay. Yep. And how do I come across as being different? Well, so your differentiation is, how do we create systems? Now, and the primary business strategy segment of your business plan, okay, no money is spent. It is strategy.
Okay.
Not tactical.
Okay.
And for that reason, it is, how do I communicate with my public? How do I communicate with my clients? How do I show them that I'm different? How do I, for example, differentiation, I might have a tactical plan, which lays across underneath primary business strategies. And those tactical plans is where the rubber meets the road. That's where you spend money.
Okay. So it's supporting the mission, the one above it.
Your tactical plans have to support a primary business strategy, or you don't fund them.
Sure.
So when someone comes into real estate and they need to make money because they've only got enough cash to survive 3 months, 4 months, 6 months before they start going, I got to have a job.
Yep.
If they spend money on getting something that doesn't produce income, cash flow, then the result is they consume the resources. Everyone has scarcity of resources. It just depends on the volume of scarcity. Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, would you compare that to leading with revenue?
I would compare it that way, but I would say leading with profit.
Okay.
Because, see, revenue is, okay, there are 2 models in the world, in the real estate world. There's 2 models.
What I mean is money coming in. So, yeah, you're talking after expenses, and I'm talking before.
Well, and you know people who do this. There are 2 types of agents in the world. There are 2 models for building a real estate practice that we might consider. One is a volume model, and one is a profit model. Mine was a profit model.
That's right.
Now, the difference was the discounter who worked for nothing was a volume model.
That's right.
Okay. Now, they didn't care if they made money. They just wanted volume. They wanted to be on top of the real estate board in their office and said, #1 agent, top producer, whether they made a profit or not.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you talk about primary business strategies and tactical plans that support those business strategies, so if differentiation is one of your strategy, you might use a concept or tactical plan called the mini home book. And the mini home book I write about in my book and provide an example of it and a detailed process for it. But it basically says, how do I, with my marketing materials in the home, differentiate myself to the listing prospect and to people who visit the home and to nosy neighbors who know about the home and come visit the home? How do I put something in the house that differentiates me? The other primary business strategy is to demonstrate premier marketing effort and skill. And so the mini home book does both. It differentiates, but it also demonstrates the quality and professionalism of your marketing materials that you provide to a client in their home.
Gotcha.
Okay, so when you look at the business model, so you have mission public, mission private, and because you don't want to tell the public that you're trying to make $200,000 net profit next year. Okay, that's not really a good
Probably
plan.
not a good idea.
Yeah, and then your primary business strategies could be from a technology differentiation. It could be a lot of different things that are going to differentiate you, and I provide some of those concepts in my book. Okay, but in the tactical plans is where you spend money. Now, if you fund tactical plans like in the early days, going out and getting 5 designations, where you spend 3 weeks attending classes to get a logo on your card, that doesn't produce income or profit.
That's right.
And as a result, revenue or profit.
But we've got to get the fancy stuff before we can get started.
And so what happens to a lot of realtors, they come in with limited resources to start with. They spend their time funding tactical plans that don't drive them toward their primary business strategies, and as a result, reach their mission of what they're trying to accomplish, those financial goals. And as a result, they burn their cash on tactical plans that will not produce revenue or profit. And 100%. Then they run out of money, and then what do? Well, 100%. And then the other thing that happens is desperation sits in, and please, if I keep going too long, you tell me, okay?
No, you're fine.
All right, so desperation sits in very quickly with a new agent. They get in there and they go, okay, I don't have a business model. They don't know this, but they don't have a business model. They don't have a marketing plan. They have no idea what tactical plans they should have. And so they look around them and then they start copying. Okay? They say, well, this guy sends out cards that say, I'm the best. Everybody sends out cards saying I'm the best. Everybody sends out cards saying, I sold a house, I listed a house, I did this, I did that, I'm number one, I'm blah, blah, blah. But those messages are all make them look ubiquitous the same. And as a result, they've reduced themselves to being equal to, not better than. And so the new agent very quickly gets desperate because they don't know what to do. And so they start funding tactical plans that will not likely result in revenue and profit, and therefore they run out of cash before they have the chance to be successful. And that's why you have a lot of agents that quit within the first 2 years.
Well, I think the failure rate is like 87% in 5 years. It's funny to me that you're right. It is a copycat game. They do get desperate, but it's that shiny object. One of the number one things I see agents balance is they can't help themselves get this new thing. This is the answer to all my problems. Yeah. If I just do this one thing or buy this one knickknack or whatever, and the next thing you know, it doesn't do anything. And it's boring. The path to success is boring. Yeah. It's the same disciplined actions every day. Yeah. That's what gets you, but you have to know where you're going. Like you said, it has to fit your plan, but then you have to stick with it.
Well, and I'm a big believer that if an agent's going to spend money in the early days, they should spend it on coaching. Okay, because spending it on designations gets you a shiny little logo you can put on your card, but may not mean anything to the consumer.
That's right.
And certainly doesn't make you any money. Okay. And by the way, probably didn't result in you being an expert. It only gave you a little logo that said you were an expert, and it's shallow proof. Now, let me tell you a quick story. I'll try to make it quick. Okay. Judy and I went to a conference, and there were about 300 agents there. And there were some speakers there who were techie guys. Okay. I'm relating this to your comment about shiny and new. Okay.
Gotcha.
And they were up on stage and they were telling us all that the new technologies were everything. In fact, Frank, they even told us that we were all dinosaurs and that we were all going to be out of business within 5 years because the new consumer could get so much information without us that they wouldn't need us. And they were very, very alarm-oriented in their presentation. Now, they did have some good technologies they were talking about. But their message was, if you don't adopt all these shiny new objects and do these things, you're going to become a dinosaur. Okay? In fact, behind me, you can't see it, but I got a picture of a dinosaur. Okay? And the dinosaur is dinosaur bones. Okay? Because I remember this event
funny.
so much. Okay? Well, that thing was a 3 or 4 hour meeting. And at the end of the meeting, my wife and I walked out, who was my partner in real estate in our group. My company is called the Renaissance Group. Okay. But we walked out and I said, boy, we learned a lot today, didn't we? She looked at me like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we learned a whole lot of things to do, but we learned a lot more things not to do. And she said, could you explain? I said, well, if we did everything that they're talking about, all the technologies that would admittedly be faster, would absolutely be more efficient, they would take us further away from our client, not closer. It would be less communication with the client, not more. It would be shorter, more efficient communications, not more valuable. So essentially what I said was, there are technologies that they talked about that we should use, but we need to be closer to our clients, more personal, not less personal. We don't want to use texting for everything. We don't want to use email for everything. I want to have face-to-face contact with my client on a regular, frequent basis.
Yep.
And so we went back and we restructured what we were doing. And we said, put an emphasis on personal contact. Put an emphasis on touching people, being in front of people. And that resulted in Judy and I, the brokers, I had 3 assistants. 1 broker with 3 assistants. Okay. And those 3 assistants' job in life was to free me up to talk to clients. I probably didn't do a CMA for 15 years. Okay. People did those for me. I went over them, reviewed them, of course, but they did the back office work. I was the person talking to clients. 80% or more of my time was talking to clients. Now, I would say to your listeners, if you're in business and you're a young entrepreneur, you better be talking to clients and prospects a whole lot and not spending a whole lot of time doing classes and research and a lot of other things, because you got to turn the money on. You've got to get the revenue and the profits coming in. Otherwise, you're going to run out of money before you have a success. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's all about HBUT, right? Highest and best use of time. So if you're not doing it, then.
One of my major concepts in the book is scarcity of resource and understanding scarcity of resource. You only have, and by the way, who's the most valuable resource? What is the most valuable resource a young person has who's an agent or an insurance agent or a financial planner? The most valuable resources they have is them. Mm-hmm. And when they tie that resource up on things that are not money making,
that's right,
they put themselves into a nosedive into failure. Okay. Now, so the goal is when you're a new real estate agent or entrepreneur, you better know how to use these fingers, and they better not be broken, and you better have a voice, and you better use the fingers to dial the phone and reach out to people and talk to people, and you better be out in front of people, because you're going to, sitting in your office, you're going to die. Okay. Yep. Now, the fact is that the virtual office, let's talk about that for a minute. A lot of models in real estate today are moving agents toward virtual offices, which means what? They're at home. They're not networking with other people. They're not in an office environment where they can get together with 2 or 3 other agents and brainstorm. They can't explore ideas and opportunities. And if they're in an office at home and they don't have a coach or someone to teach them, and they're not reading material that is innovative, creative, and really rewarding to them, knowledge teaching to them, then they're going to sit there and like the mushroom. They're going to be like a mushroom in a room, and they don't know quite what to do, so they panic and they start spending money on things like going to a conference and spending $3,000 to go to a conference where they think they're going to learn something, and they learn basic copycat type marketing techniques. Okay.
Yep.
And so you've got to put your time and effort into creating relationships and building the business. Now, the business model that I described, if you go back and think about mission, public, mission, private, primary business strategies, tactical plans that support the primary business strategies that drive you toward achievement of your mission. And underneath that is what? You can't really do a budget without that, can you? How can you do a budget if you don't know what tactical plans are? I will tell you something that people need to realize. A real estate agent who's building a real estate practice, their budget is 90% marketing. So if you don't have a marketing plan, you're not earmarking where you're going to spend 90% of your money. Now, if you don't have any money to spend on marketing, you're simply just hoping and praying that somebody will knock on the door or call you and say, I want to sell a home. In fact, you're hoping that a relative will call you and say, I want to buy a home. Or one of your best friends from college will call you. And then when they're gone and they've bought, guess what happens? The rookie of the year is one of the very big deals in real estate, right? You go into a real estate office and someone's the rookie of the year, and you really start delving into it. And they sold 3 of their family members' homes. They sold their home and bought another home. And then 2 friends from college bought homes. And then year 2 comes around, year 3 comes around, and they're going, oh my gosh, I have no business. Okay. You better have a business and marketing plan. Now, 90% of all the money you spend in real estate is going to be in marketing.
True.
If you're not doing that, you're probably going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the investment in yourself and the investment back into the business from the marketing standpoint for sure.
Now, when I said that I had 3 people who their only job in life was to free me up to talk to people, I obviously knew how to call people and talk to people. I knew how to identify opportunities. I knew how to identify target markets. I knew how to identify and look for people who were connectors.
That's what you got to do. You got to play to your strengths. I love it. I think it's great. I love the conversation. It's been a good conversation. I like it. Man, there's another 50 different ways we could go here.
For sure.
We're gonna have to do this again because we have there's a lot going on in our industry right now. So
for sure, I have an entire discussion about the future of the industry and what I would say would be very optimistic and positive versus negative, because I see nothing but good happening in the future.
I agree.
If you're a consultative, collaborative real estate agent and not a product salesperson, don't worry.
I agree. Where would you like people to go to find you? Where can they find you? Where can they find the book?
Well, I'm on YouTube. I have a channel. AREP stands for Architecture of the Real Estate Practice 2023. AREP 2023 is my YouTube channel. They can go to the book website at realestatebook.org, O-R-G. Okay. They can go to my website for real estate, which is sonnymoyers.com. I have a blog on Blogger. I have a lot of marketing out there. And if they just go to YouTube and just type in under search Sonny R Moyers podcast, they'll find 16 to 18 hours of conversations like you and I have just had. And that's a great place to start. But I would recommend that they consider the book, because the book takes them through a process. It's a textbook, Frank. It's not. As our discussion today is very complex with a lot of nuggets in it, right? Because it's a textbook, not I'm a get rich quick real estate book. Okay.
Sure.
It's a textbook, and it will take, I have a group of people, 8 agents that work in a group, and they bought 8 copies of my book. And each week they're meeting and discussing one chapter. And they're up to chapter 16 now. There's 40 chapters in the book. Okay. This will take them 40 weeks or longer to finish the book. It's a complex book. It is not a quick read. And while I would love everybody to buy it, that would be wonderful. But I only really want people to buy it who use it. And many people will buy it and will not be able to complete it because it is complex.
I think that right now is a great time to buy the book because of the way the market is.
For sure.
And who doesn't want all the tips and tricks or experience from someone who's been in the business over 50 years?
Well, can I share one more story with you?
Of course.
A number of years ago, there was a recession, and we were in this recession, and a lot of agents were cutting back on marketing. And those were what I call abandoned dollars. They were leaving markets and not continuing to contact them because of the recession. And what they basically did was abandoned all of their marketing and all the expenditures they had made up to that point, and going to lose market share in those areas that they left. Okay. And so we doubled and then tripled our marketing expenditures during the recession. Why? To get market share. We said, well, when these other people cut back and leave, let's be the face that they see. Let's be the one who's out there still marketing. And that was a significant, we did a major, this was back in the days when newspapers still had power, in advertising. And we doubled and then tripled our advertising budget from newspaper advertising. Okay. We went way the opposite direction. One fundamental rule in real estate: if everybody is sending cards, don't send cards. Okay. If everybody's doing
do the opposite
shopping carts at the local grocery mart, don't do a shopping cart. Okay. Right. Spend your time talking to people. So go where the others aren't, not where they are. Okay. And so look for ways to be innovative and creative. And I think the book provides them a great way of doing that because it's a consultative oriented approach rather than product centered approach. And it's, I've had many, many years of success. Thank goodness. I'm 73 now. I don't really
look
want to
amazing.
Work well, thank you.
Hope I look that good at 73.
You will for sure. But one of the people who, there are three powerful people on the back of my book that wrote quotes. And one of them said to me, Sonny, I don't get it. I said, what do you mean, the book? He said, no, I get the book. I don't get you. I said, why? He said, Sonny, you're opening the kimono. You're showing the whole world all you do. You're sharing all your secrets. And I said, well, I'm 73. I don't intend to work till I'm 90. That's why I wrote the book. I wanted to do something different and challenging. Boy, it was challenging writing this book. It was challenging, 2 years. But I think he said to me, why are you doing this? And I said, well, at this point in my life, I would like to see a few people come into real estate and not fail. I would like to see people not have to struggle for 2 years. And I tell a story in the book about a gentleman that I helped that had spent two years or 3 years operating a business that was a real estate related business. It was a business center, like a Regis Center or a WeWork, something like that. And he had lost $400,000. And he was a wealthy guy, but $400,000 is still a lot of money to lose.
It's a lot of money.
And he didn't have a plan. He didn't have a model. He just jumped into it. And I think people, before they jump into it, need to have something to build their plan on. And that's what the book was written for.
I love it.
Step by step.
Giving back. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm impressive story. Thank you for sharing everything. And I recommend everybody get the book. It looks great. I'm going to get it. And I appreciate you coming on and walking us through it and talking to us.
Frank, if I might, it's a hardback, but it's got QR codes in it that when you scan the QR codes, it takes you to my YouTube channel and you see me talking about the chapter you're reading about at the time. Okay.
Gotcha.
And it's got also over 5,000 words of scripts, actual words you use in real estate. Okay.
Love it.
So it's a very different book. It's a multimedia type book rather than just a standard, let me tell you my story book.
Love it.
A lot of teaching in it. There are some stories about my clients that you'll find very enjoyable. Like how to reach out and sell to somebody you don't know.
All important. That's one of the number one things we have to do. So I love it. Well, I appreciate it. And everybody, we'll put the links in the show notes as well.
Great.
And let everybody know where to go. And I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks for showing up to another episode, and we'll catch you guys next time. Thanks, everybody.